we have seen the time taken to meet with some of the individuals, some of the team members who have worked mornings, they've worked nights, they've worked weekends. I know they've cancelled holidays to make sure we have launched this on-soil COVID vaccination campaign as well as could have been done. So we are enormously proud here at CSL and Securus to make it happen. So we're very pleased to welcome the Prime Minister again. I'd just like to say more than 800,000 doses have been released this week. This is an enormous effort, and I would thank every single person who's been involved in this at CSL. It is huge. We've got nearly 3 million doses already filled in vials. They're all going through various levels of quality controls. They will never be compromised. This dedication to quality and safety, it's the #1 priority for CSL, and every single vaccine that leaves this facility has gone through numerous checks and will continue to do so. But we're in really good shape. Over 3 million doses ready, going through final stages of production. We're in really good shape. And we know it doesn't end there. We know there's a magic number of 50 million doses, and we are committed and we're dedicated to meeting that number so all Australians got access to this vaccine. So we're in good shape, we're very pleased where we are, and we're very proud to be making such a wonderful contribution to this effort. I'll leave it there. I'll ask the Prime Minister to say a few words, and any questions, I'll stick around. Prime Minister.
Thank you, Stephen, and thank you, Brian, but most of all, thank you to all the wonderful employees here at CSL and Securus. It's a great honour and privilege for me again to come here today at this very, very old site that is doing something quite amazing. You know, there have been great moments in our national history, and this is now one of them. What has been achieved here and will continue to be achieved here with the rollout of the Australian-made AstraZeneca vaccine is something that I think all Australians can feel extremely proud of. And the people who are doing it here, you can feel extremely proud of. They are national heroes. We've seen so many of those in responses to great disasters, Australia's great achievements. And those who are working here join those ranks, because what they're doing here is getting Australia back on the path to where we want to be. In August of last year, we made a decision as a government. We took the view that Australia could not be left isolated from the vaccine production. It was a very serious decision. And we had to turn to our scientific and commercial community that is involved in vaccine production in this country. And we had to ask them to get this job done. Back in August, as the pandemic was raging here in Victoria and it was locked down as we were going through that second wave, that's when that call was made. And I can't tell you the sense of pride that I have, Brian and Stephen and your team, both here and out at Broadmeadows, as I look down at those 500,000 doses today in that storage room where, I've got to say, the most important warehouse in the country is operating right now with a wonderful team running it. And that was the realisation of that significant decision that we took together. Then it was a clear commitment, but today it has turned into something very, very real, which is changing the life of this nation and is putting us back where we want to be. There is still a long way to go on this road as the vaccination program rolls out. 800,000 out the door, and that will continue to increase. Today we should get to around 450,000 people who are vaccinated. By the time we start next week, we will have 500,000, we anticipate, will have received the vaccines across the country. This just keeps building every week, every single week. And now the supply is on out of our Australian-made vaccine here. This has been the big game changer that we've been working so long and so hard to secure for our country. There's just over 6 countries in the world that make this vaccine, the AstraZeneca vaccine. That is the small club we're in, and we're leading that club. Of that small group of countries who do it, we're doing it the best. We're doing it the best because we've got the best people and we've got the best collaboration. It's been very pleasing to hear today about the wonderful collaboration that has produced this outcome for Australia. Not just the amazing people here, but the people at the Therapeutic Goods Administration, the people at the CSIRO. This has been a team effort of public sector and private sector coming together to achieve something that Australia had to achieve. There was no option other than to do this. There was no second best here that was available to this country. If we didn't achieve this, there would not be a vaccination program in Australia. That's how serious this task has been. It has been a gargantuan task. And to just look at those packs today of doses ready to go, that is an extraordinary moment in Australia's history. And I'm so incredibly proud. So we go from this point, we continue to ramp up what's being achieved. As Stephen was saying, over 3 million of these doses already in various stages of the process. But what's really important here, as you would have been seeing me doing upstairs, is that quality control and that testing and those protections. We're not just good at making it, well, we're great at making it, but we're the best in the world in making sure it is safe. And that's why I can say to Australians that they can confidently go and take these vaccines, and that by doing so, working together as a team, we will continue on the road where we are leading the world out of the COVID-19 pandemic and out of the COVID-19 recession. And one of the biggest team members in achieving that is CSL Seqirus. Happy to take some questions, firstly on the vaccination issue, and then we can move quickly to other matters. Just quickly on another matter, I want to congratulate our AFP Joint Counter-Terrorism Task Forces on the great work that they've been doing to disrupt these arrangements and tracking down these individuals who are working with overseas terrorists. This has been an extraordinary piece of work, and I think it is a reminder that while we've been dealing with pandemics, while we've been dealing now floods, and I'll be on the mid-north coast today with Premier Berejiklian, and so we won't have too much time for a lot of questions. I'll be standing up again later today because I need to get to the mid-north coast today and be there with those planners and the recovery response that's being put in place there for those floods. So I'm sure you'll understand that. But all the big jobs that we have to do as a government, whether it's protecting Australia from terrorists, whether it's responding to the floods, whether it's getting this vaccination rollout, whether it's getting Australians back into jobs, more Australians in jobs now than before the pandemic started. You know, the health and welfare and well-being and the economic security of Australians. This is something that never departs from my gaze. This is a big job Australia has at the moment, and I can tell you we are on it. Questions?
Some of the GPs are a bit concerned about not having enough vaccines and so forth. Will this rollout from CSL help that, the rollout in one feed?
Yeah, I met with the GPs here in Melbourne last week, as you know, and I'm thrilled that we're doing this through the GPs. The GPs are the best people to do this through, and particularly as we go into this we're into this next group now of some 6 million Australians, so a lot of elderly Australians. The person you can rely on most when it comes to your health and that you turn to most is your GP. And that's the right place for us to ensure this is done with all the appropriate care and attention and on focusing on the individual health needs of those who are receiving this vaccine. And now we've already got over 1,000 GPs involved. The doses are already with all those GPs, those 1,000, and they'll be working through that as they have been over the course of this week. And that's why you're seeing the significant ramp up now. We said we'd hit in those early phases around 80,000 a week, and we did. We said we'd start the vaccination program in mid-late February, and we did. We said that the Australian-made vaccine would be ready to go and rolling out of this plant in March, and it has. We said that the GPs would be enlisted in this program, and over 1,000 of the first would be administering doses this month, and they are. And so we're going to keep working closely with the GPs, and we're getting tremendous support from them, and where there are ever issues here or there, then we're attending to them and we're getting on with them. And I want to thank the GPs of Australia You're part of this amazing effort now. When they leave the cold storage room here, one team from Team Australia passes it on to the next team of Team Australia, and that's those GPs who are administering those doses, and in the states and territories with their workforces, it's being done through the great health workers there.
You must be pleased to see international travel resuming in Victoria. Are you confident that the hotel quarantine system will be right this time?
Well, only the Premier, or I should say the Acting Premier, is in the best position to give that assurance, but I know they've been very careful about coming to this decision. And I'm looking forward to that occurring, because I'm trying to get Australians home. We've got a lot of Australians home, and we still need to get more Australians home. And Victoria, that hasn't been able to play their part in that pretty much since last July. And other states have been doing that heavy lifting, particularly New South Wales, bringing Victorians home through New South Wales or through Queensland, or indeed through Western Australia and South Australia. I'm pleased that the Victorian government now is going to be able to once again take part in helping Australians get home, and in particular Victorians get home, and I'm sure they're very grateful to the other states and territories who have been carrying that load.
You said last night that you would be happy to sit down.
Okay, we're going to move to other issues. Are there any other questions on vaccines? Because otherwise
I do have one question on the vaccine. Just
okay, let's do that first.
Clive Palmer's being investigated by the AEC over flyers printed in his former party's colours questioning the vaccine rollout. Should he face consequences?
Well, look, I'm going to ask Brian or Stephen to talk about these issues more broadly, about the importance of ensuring that we have the appropriate information out there. Our government is doing everything we possibly can to counter misinformation out there. This is misinformation, pure and simple. Don't listen to it, it's rubbish. It's complete rubbish. And no, there should be no politics in our vaccination program. This has got nothing to do with politics. This has got to do with the health and well-being of Australians, because that is the continued ticket also to our economic recovery. And I just don't have any part, or will have no part, in anyone who wants to politicise and have a go at this program for political purposes. That's just not on. Did you, Stephen, want to talk about that?
I mean, just to add, I guess I would just like to reassure all Australians only the highest level of quality, efficacy, potency standards. I mean, this is what CSL does. We make vaccines, we make products for rare diseases, only the highest quality. This is part of our DNA. So Australians should be reassured. We should listen to the scientists, we should listen to the medical experts, and we have a world-class regulator in the TGA. So from my point of view, it's a very good vaccine, it's a safe vaccine, and we should be starting a vaccination program, and people should be confident to receive the vaccine on the back of the recommendations from the TGA.
Thank you. Are there no other questions on vaccines? Okay, well, thank you very much, Brian and Stephen, and thanks to all the wonderful team here. It's great. It's a great team, and I know you're incredibly proud of what they've done. Thank you for your tremendous leadership as well. Thank you. Thank you. I'll excuse you guys, and I've got time for a couple because
okay.
I've got to get to the Mid-North Coast and the floods.
Just briefly, you said last night you'd be happy to sit down and have a chat with Brittany Higgins. Will either you or your office make that approach today?
Yeah, well, it's effectively made, so we're happy to meet. I can understand if Brittany wished to meet, and that she hasn't expressed that to this point, and I understand why, and that's fine. We've always sought to respect her privacy and her wishes on this, and I could also appreciate that why she wouldn't necessarily want to meet in Parliament House. That would be totally understandable. We can arrange to meet in other cities.
So when do you expect that conversation to occur?
Well, I can't tell you, because that really is now a matter for Brittany. Well, let me tell you what we've already done. Initially, it was about getting support, counselling support for those who need it in relation to any incident that can occur. And we've already put that strengthened counselling service in place for staff in Parliament House. That's already happened. That was one of the first things we did. The second thing we did is we got all the parties together, and we've set up the multi-party inquiry to look at how the systems and processes can be better to supporting people in situations like this, as well as also how do we deal with complaints that may not extend to things of a criminal nature, which in Brittany's case, that's certainly what it involved. And those matters are ultimately best dealt with by police, as they should be. And I'm pleased that after 2 years, I'm very pleased that that matter is now before the police. The other thing, though, it needs to do is harassment claims or allegations or complaints, and how they're better handled within the Australian Parliament. And for members and senators of all parties, because I don't think anyone is suggesting that this is an issue that's confined to any one side of politics. That's certainly not my experience. And I know that's not the experience of people who work at Parliament House either. And so it's important that we get that process right. The Deputy Secretary of my department is coming back to me very soon with a report on how we can get such a complaints process in place even sooner than that. So we don't have to wait till the Sex Discrimination Commissioner's inquiry is finished, which is much later this year. We need such a process much sooner than that. And that was one of the first things I initiated soon after Brittany took her story public. There's a lot more. As I said in the Parliament this week, we'll be responding to the Respect at Work inquiry before the budget. I've become directly engaged in that process with the Acting Attorney-General, Natalia Cash, as well as the Assistant Minister to the Attorney-General, Senator Stoker. And we're working swiftly on those issues. But I do note, of the 20 recommendations that were directly put to the Australian government because of the 55 recommendations of the Respect at Work report, many dealt with not just the federal government, but states and territories, agencies, business and industry, as you'd expect. It's an issue that is not confined just to government. And of those 20 that directly went to the Australian government, 9 we responded to in the budget in October, but we were responding to more. But as I said last night, and not all of the interview I gave last night was broadcast. It was a much longer interview. It went for, I think, almost twice the time that Tracy and I sat down with. We were having a real discussion about this, and I know Australians are having a real discussion about that. And we've got to have that discussion. I spoke a lot about the need for us to deal with respect in our community and in our society. And I'm deeply troubled by the way that social media is corroding respect and dignity in how we all deal with each other. I think this has a lot to do with the sort of attitudes and the way that we engage with each other, and particularly that can feed the sort of disrespect towards women that can result in the most awful of violent acts. And, you know, it used to be people would just say hateful things and write it down on a post. People are now saying these things to each other. Australia, we've got to fix this. And governments alone can't fix this. We've got to work harder on how we respect each other, because out of that well of respect will come respect for so much more. Respect for women, respect for the elderly, respect for Australians living with disability, respect for Australians coming from many different backgrounds from all around the world. We're the most successful immigration nation, multicultural nation on the planet, but we can do better. Respect for Indigenous Australians. As Australians, we've just got to work that bit harder on how we create a culture of respect in this country, because from disrespect comes both the conscious and unconscious discrimination and humiliations that are placed on Australians every day, in particular women. So that is a task I'm asking all Australians to join me. That's what we've got to fix ultimately. There's a lot we've got to do around the legal system and further supports. You know, one Australian woman dies every 9 days because of partner-related violence. We know that figure. We've known that figure a long time. $1 billion has been put in under the national action plans to protect against violence against women by our government alone. And there's the work that state governments do as well. We've all got responsibilities here, but we can't forget our own individual responsibility. What are we going to change? What am I going to change in my own life? What are we each going to change to create this better culture of respect in this country? Australians are amazing. We do amazing things. We've tackled amazing challenges, particularly in the last year. This is another one.
Given that, what do you make of Andrew Laming's reported comments to 2 women in his electorate?
I found them disgraceful, and I called him into my office yesterday and told him to apologise and deal with it, and he has.
And do you expect that this now means that there's a zero tolerance policy towards him from now on?
He's very clear about my expectations.
question.
Before Secretary handed over evidence to your office about the alleged use of male sex workers at Parliament House, have you conducted inquiries into whether any of your current MPs hired or used male?
Well, this is a very serious issue, and I want to thank the individual who we reached out to and asked them through an intermediary to come forward and be able to give us information. And with anything as sensitive as this, it's important it follows now a proper process to look into these matters. And so I'm going to let people do their jobs on this. It's not appropriate for me to give a running commentary on each step of that process. Australians should know that we're taking this extremely seriously and following up on all of that information that has been provided to us. But it's important that that is done in a proper way. It shouldn't be done on Twitter, it shouldn't be done in the media, it should be done through a proper process of investigation now which is underway.
Can I just ask one question about...
When I'm ready to make announcements on those things, I will.
Just in terms of JobKeeper, Treasury estimates as many as 150,000 people will lose their jobs as a result of JobKeeper ending. What is your message to those people?
Today, there are more people in jobs than there were before when the pandemic hit. I mean, around 1 million jobs either went or went to 0 hours as a result of the pandemic. And within a year, we've been able to get all those jobs back into the Australian economy. And at each time we've changed JobKeeper and geared it down, we've seen more jobs come into the Australian economy. The Treasury Secretary made it very clear that, that he wasn't saying that unemployment would necessarily rise. Each month, there is a lot of churn that occurs in the labour force, and we see a lot of extra jobs created. And the numbers you see are the net jobs, where some jobs are lost, other jobs have been created, and that's what we've seen been occurring now for many months. Now, this is the next big step. But, you know, when we put JobKeeper in place, we knew it'd be temporary. We knew there would come a day when we would have to step back from it. But that should be seen as a statement of confidence in the Australian economy and Australian businesses, because you can't run the Australian economy on taxpayers' money forever. It was a brave decision, a very brave decision of our government to step up when Australians needed us with JobKeeper. And I don't think they could for a second doubt the level of support that was provided. JobKeeper saved livelihoods and it saved lives. It's also a brave decision and the right decision to know when it's time, when you need to allow the economy, now that it's recovering, to be able to take on that load of getting people in jobs and keeping people in jobs. And, you know, our government is a fiscally responsible government, and we know that there comes a time when you have to then back Australians and back the Australian business community to lead our economy into the future. And that's what we're doing. See, we know when we need to spend, and we know when we need to stop spending. And I think that's why Australians trust our government so much when it comes to managing the nation's finances and managing the national economy. There'll be others who'll say that they'll want to spend forever, but that means that they want to tax forever too, and that puts a burden on Australians, and that slows our growth. So we know when to act, and we did. We also know when it's the responsible thing to move to the next stage, and that's what we're doing. So I'd ask you to excuse me because I need to get to the Mid-North Coast. Thanks very much for your time. Thank you.
Excuse me.